Welcome to Techworks. In this short tutorial, we're going to talk about the new laser that has recently been added to our large laser cutter Frankenlaser Torbenstein. We've recently added a 40-watt laser appropriate for engraving, and we've also added a new laser lens assembly that has a compound lens capable of getting a focus of at least 0.1 millimeter. We now also have two laser heads. The new engraving laser, the 40-watt, is on the left side, and it's labeled Laser 1. And our old 150-watt cutting laser is on the right side, and it's labeled Laser 2. You'll notice that the air line has now been split to provide air assist for both lens tubes here. The one on the left has a small valve on it that you can adjust. In order to adjust this properly, when you put your finger on here, you shouldn't be able to feel air pushing off of it, but if you press tightly against it, you should feel a bit of resistance as the air prevents you from capping it off. If you have too much air coming through here, you'll get a lot of spatter and smoke being deposited on the piece that you're engraving. But if you have too little, there won't be enough air pressure inside the nozzle tip to keep the fumes and other things from coming in and fouling the lens within. So it's very important that there's at least some air coming out of that nozzle. Laser 1 also has a small red dot sight on it. All of the movements in Lightburn are referenced to the position of this red dot. That includes anything that you cut with Laser 2. When you tell it to cut with Laser 2, it will move this lens tube over top of where the red dot currently is. So everything is referenced to this point. The new laser, Laser 1, comes from the left side of the machine. So the laser light will be coming from the hole in the back, off of this mirror on the left side of the gantry, and into the window on the left side of this lens tube. Aligning the laser on this one is the same as aligning it on our old laser tube, except this time everything's coming from this left side. When using the pulse function, it's important to note that the pulse will fire on both lasers at once. In order to control this appropriately, use the max power button to set the power settings for both lasers. Remember that power 1 is for Laser 1, which is the engraving laser, and power 2 is for Laser 2, which is the cutting laser. So in this case, right now we have the engraving laser turned down to its minimum setting, 8%, and we have the cutting laser set up to nearly its maximum setting, 90%. This would essentially fire just the second laser while barely firing the first laser at all. In order to test the spot of just the engraving laser, switch these two around. You can switch them by using the ZU key to alternate between them, and then using the arrow keys to modify the number on the display, and press enter when you're complete. Then you can fire the laser. To configure the laser power, there are two options. Below the list of cuts and layers, you will have some options here for controlling which lasers are enabled, speed, and the power. I don't recommend using these ones because it's a little bit confusing. I will come back to those in a moment. First, we'll look at the other way, which is to double-click on any one of the layers that we have available. Within the layer, you'll see two different options here. For each column here, we've got Laser 1 and Laser 2, and this little checkbox flip switch thing represents whether or not that laser will be used for this layer. In the column below it, you'll see the max power and minimum power that will apply to that cut with that laser. So the left column will be the settings for Laser 1, and the right column will be the settings for Laser 2. Note that the speed is shared between the two of them. You can use this shortcut down here, however this radio button here for Laser 1 and 2 is a bit confusing. The radio button tells you which laser you are looking at settings for. So right now with the Laser 1 selected, we are looking at the settings for Laser 1, and it says that Laser 1 is enabled at a speed of 200 millimeters per second with 50% max power, 50% min power. If we switch over to Laser 2, we see that Laser 2 is disabled and it has these settings. So this is not choosing which laser you are going to use, but it's choosing which laser you're looking at settings for. So keep that in mind. I do recommend going into the layer and using this directly instead. As an example of how to use this, we'll now engrave a simple object. Here I have two different layers set up. The black layer is set up for my raster. This one I'll be filling in using horizontal movements. And then the blue layer is the cutout that I'll be using. The rastering I'm going to be doing with the first laser, with the 40-watt engraving laser. So if I double-click on the raster layer, you can see that Laser 1 is enabled and Laser 2 is off. So I will only be using the engraving laser. I'm going to go at 200 millimeters per second at 50% power. Because I'm doing a raster, I can use constant power and it will automatically go past the raster area and accelerate up to full speed before it starts rastering. Because we have a really good focus on this laser, I can do a line interval of 0.1 millimeters or 254 lines per inch. Then for the cutout at the end, which I'll do second, I'm going to open up the cut layer. This one here has only laser 2 enabled, and it'll be moving at 20 millimeters per second at 100% power, which is a common setting for going through 3 millimeter plywood. I've also set up a kerf offset of 0.1 outwards because this is approximately what we need to make up for the 0.2 millimeter plot size that we get with our cutting laser. Keep in mind that both of these lasers are going to be active and that everything's going to be referenced to the left laser, the 40 watt laser with the red dot sight. For the purposes of our test, I'll set up the job origin to be at the center, which should be the center of our object and will be where the red dot is. And we'll start cutting. You can see that the raster operates very quickly. Even at 200 millimeters per second with 50% power, there's a very definite black engrave here. And this is actually a very heavy engrave. We could have gone with much less if we wanted to. You'll also notice that it is moving past the edge of the object so that it can accelerate up to full speed, so you can use constant power through the entire engrave. For this reason, I highly recommend using the fill option if you have large areas to do, as opposed to cutting lines. Once the raster is done, it'll switch over to laser 2, which will go and use the right laser to do the cut. Notice that it moves everything over in order to make use of the second laser head, so ensure that there's enough clearance for the left laser head. At the normal focus that we use, it has an 11.5 millimeter distance from the surface to the tip, which is enough room to clear most magnets that we would use. Thank you for joining us for this short tutorial. If you'd like more information on Techworks and any of the tools we have available, please visit our website at sktechworks.ca.